coming along with this little event. And thank you particularly to the Historical Society for hosting this for us. And it's very nice to be doing it in a place and in the arms of an organisation which meant so much to Eileen for so many years of her life. I'm going to act as a kind of MC, I suppose, and just introduce people. And one of the things we want to do is to give anyone who would like to say a few words an opportunity to do so. As you can see there, we've got my brother Ilfryn and his wife Judy joining us from Manchester. Ilfryn's going to say a few words in a few minutes, but just as a way of sort of framing the whole thing, when I was thinking about how I could introduce this, I was reminded of something that Eileen said to me 30 years ago, in 1980, when she retired from the University of New England. I think this was before she retired. And she said something like that she was hoping that there wouldn't be any fuss. She was hoping that there wouldn't be any sort of farewell event. She could just sit quietly away. And I think that's very revealing about Eileen. I mean, as you all know, she was a very strong woman, very strong intellect, someone who's quite capable of being a leader, but at the same time she wasn't somebody who naturally sort of chose the limelight. And I think perhaps she that sort of event, which would have been centred on her, made her feel a little bit uncomfortable. So I was sort of conscious that in doing this, we were in a sense, in a small sense, acting against her wishes, in making her the centre of attention here, but I hope she would forgive us for that. And I'm sure that happened 30 years ago with you and me too. I'm sure there was some sort of event to mark the occasion, and we had a lovely letter recently from one of the people who knew well at that time. Okay, so now if the computer is working, I think I'll hand you over to Ilfryn. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, so would you like to say something? You've got the floor.
Thank you, Hugh. Thank you, everybody, and thanks particularly to you and Conway for organising the event, as well as to the Society. I went through a remarkable journey. I'm just old enough to remember the house where it started, her parents' home in middle-class Bournemouth. I think I had chicken pox and was about 3, but it's an early memory. It's a long journey from there to Radwick. Education, you talked about New England, Hugh, it was one of her driving values throughout her life. And maybe even that came from her own mother, who either was or wanted to be, I can't remember which, the first woman in 19th century England to train as a pharmacist. She inspired us all. The phrase "to be curious travellers" comes to mind. You've talked about a memory, Hugh, from 1980. One of my early memories actually comes from the 1960s. And she was marking geography papers while she was teaching at a local school when we lived in Birchfont. And she used to share some of the howlers that came up in these papers with me. And one was pupils were asked to define a watershed. And one of them wrote, "It is where rivers run away from each other. If they ran together, there would be a bog." That was actually a joke that she and I often shared afterwards. And it may even be what triggered me to start getting interested in geography and geology. So watersheds are a bit of a theme. When we moved to Australia, it was a watershed for the whole family. And I think it was a watershed that she's probably engineered. It was certainly a watershed for me. I just finished school, I couldn't wait to get away. Even with the only scholarships available restricted my choice of university. Bizarrely, the New South Wales Education Department at the time would pay my college fees the other side of town, but no further away. And then, of course, I flew, or in those days strictly sailed further away in 1971. And I remember Eileen visiting England in 73 when her own mother was actually dying in a nursing home bed. And I know she didn't want the same experience. She would have wished to go, and we talked about this too, without a protracted struggle against the dying of the light. I have to weave Dylan Thomas in somewhere. Before that, she raged against it on occasions, but like you, Hugh, I know how the Historical Society enabled her to stay mentally active for a number of years. I can remember, and we actually literally had to cross a watershed, taking her to the other Randwick in about 1996 to trace down the birthplace of James Hooper, who of course had had his own remarkable journey to finish up in Randwick, or the other Randwick, in the 19th century. I never heard her get sentimental about the comparison. She didn't do sentiment, as you said, but she was an inspiration to us, to her grandchildren, and to many others. She didn't believe at all in life after death, except as memory, any more than I do. She did believe, I think, in curiosity, education, and history, and I'm delighted that we can establish some sort of fund with the Society that will keep a memory of her alive and encourage curiosity, education, and history in others. So she lives on in my memory, she lives on in those of future generations, I hope, and certainly her surviving relatives here in the UK. Her granddaughters can't be with us at this time today, but they all send their condolences, as do Judy and I, and Hannah, and we have some flowers here picked freshly this morning from our garden. We couldn't sit in the garden to be with you, it was pouring with rain. But thank you everybody, and Eileen, I remember you.